Welcome to the Point. In our last segment, we addressed the biblical worldview and how it should govern our thinking and our lives, including our political involvement. Your biblical worldview will have no opportunity to influence if you do not engage. According to the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University, a recent survey by evangelical pollster George Barna reveals that as many as 104 million people of faith, including 41 million self-described born-again Christians, are unlikely to vote in our November 2024 election. Pastor Andy Wood says the problem with Christians opting out of the political process and failing to vote is that the world is outpacing the church in shaping our worldview. I would add that the world is outpacing the church in shaping our culture. Remember, elections have consequences. Barna says, back in 2020, the margins of victory were a combined 587,000 votes in all 9 battleground states. This means that 41 million Christians sitting in the pews each week who refuse to vote are a game changer. What's the reason? Why the disengagement? There are many reasons Christians opt out of getting involved with elections. Some are simply indifferent, lazy, or unaware of our biblical responsibility. Some think it doesn't matter, it doesn't make a difference. Therefore, it's an exercise in futility. Some see candidates falling far short of a biblical standard and are waiting for that perfect Jesus-like candidate to surface. Still others are overwhelmed with the volumes of information coming at them and have given up on sorting out who stands for what, who believes what is true, what is false information, and they become confused, and as a result of that, it shuts people down. The Cultural Research Center reports that 68% of those polled replied that they aren't interested in politics. This is followed by 57% who dislike both presidential candidates, and another 52% who believe their vote won't make any difference. Finally, 48% worry that election results will be manipulated. So how do we respond? Opting out can't be an option. We are currently at a crucial moral junction in our country. According to the UCLA School of Law Williams Institute, states seeking to expand access to gender-affirming care have passed shield laws that provide legal protections from punitive actions in other states. Currently, through legislation or executive order, 17 states and Washington, D.C. have shield laws protections, allowing permanent bodily disfigurement by prescribing puberty-blocking drugs, cross-sex hormones, and elective castration for boys and mastectomies for girls. These states say if a child has been unable to obtain parental consent for their transition in gender, the state can take their child from the parents. So a state can decide that a parent who says to their son, who is a minor, "You can't change your gender," can charge parents with abuse and take the child and shelter that child. The parents' God-given responsibility over their children has been taken from them by that state. In another account, according to the Axios report of October 2023, the number of total legal abortions increased the year following the overturning of Roe v. Wade. A string of state bans and restrictions on abortion haven't lowered the overall abortion rate. Currently, through legislation or executive order, 23 states and Washington, D.C. have shield law protections relating to abortion, including our own Washington state. 12 states allow abortions for up to 9 months, and some of those even allow for death of a child post-birth. How have these and other moral atrocities come into our country? It is the political process. While some Christians will take the self-described moral high road and not get their hands dirty in the political process, the liberals and progressives are transforming our nation with hell's agenda. Elections are much more than electing a president. Family Research Council President Tony Perkins reminds us there are much more important decisions than just the presidency on the state and local ballots. Governors, state attorneys general, and local school boards have more direct influence in protecting children from radical gender ideology and pushing back on corporate America's woke agenda, fighting the government's lawless overreach, and passing sweeping pro-life and pro-parent laws. Perkins went on to say, the short-sightedness of many evangelical Christians threatens to leave everyone from our global neighbors to our next-door neighbors without help or hope. Cornerstone Chapel senior pastor Gary Hamrick says, think about what has happened here in America in just the last 35 years. There's been gender confusion, marriage redefinition, the stripping of parental authority, and the deterioration of basic human freedoms. The nanny state has approved pornographic reading material in many public school systems and approved readings in local libraries by bearded, transgendered men in dresses and fishnet stockings. When we do not get involved in the political process, we leave a vacuum for every evil, predatorial ideology. The world abhors a vacuum and readily fills it with the nearest option. The political indifference and disgust that characterizes many evangelical Christians cause them to leave the direction of our culture and the future of our children and grandchildren in the hands of ungodly and even evil actors. We cannot cede any more ground to the enemy. God's people can be the deciding factor in life and death, good and evil. And so how can we not be engaged? Let me take a few minutes then to answer this question. How then shall we vote? If there's no perfect candidate or system, how then shall we vote as God's people? First, let me encourage you to heed Paul's exhortation in Galatians chapter 6 and verse 9. It says this, and let us not grow weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we do not give up. Don't give up. Don't let the enemy's lies convince you it doesn't matter or that you don't have a responsibility to govern the affairs of this earth. Second, vote for the candidates and the initiatives that most represent the biblical worldview. There is no perfect candidate. There is no perfect scenario. There is no perfect initiative. We must put aside our idealism and look at the practical realities. How can we best stem the tide of evil? The candidates in the respective parties present two starkly different visions for our country. Party platforms declare political parties' values and the policy roadmap it intends to follow. Research indicates that politicians vote about 80% of the time according to their party platforms. To give you a jump start, the following summary of party platform positions was sourced from the Family Research Council. The first is human life. Republicans promote life. No person can be denied life or liberty without due process. Though their position is less pro-life than in 2020, they leave the legality of abortion up to the states and oppose late-term abortion. Democrats focus on abortion rights, including full-term babies. Marriage. Republicans promote the sanctity of marriage, though in the definition they removed one man and one woman this year. They get closer to the biblical perspective. Democrats focus on the LGBTQ plus agenda and issues in their marriage position. On human sexuality, Republicans will ban taxpayer funding for sex change surgeries, stop taxpayer-funded schools from promoting gender transition, and reverse Biden's radical rewrite of Title IX, which allows boys and young men to compete with girls. Democrats promise to promote all things LGBTQ+. Concerning the rule of law, Republicans will stop the weaponization of government, judicial systems that violate the constitutional rights of Americans of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Democrats will respect and enforce foundational precedents, including Roe v. Wade. Concerning religious liberties, Republicans will defend the First Amendment right to religious liberty in the places of worship and in everyday life. They will respect and promote the right of every American to follow his or her deeply held beliefs. Democrats will celebrate religious pluralism and tolerance and emphasize the paramount importance of maintaining the separation between church and state, which is enshrined in our Constitution. Now, briefly, that is their words. In fact-checking, I think we all know the separation of church and state is not part of our nation's founding documents, yet they hope to gaslight people in thinking that's the case. Second Amendment. Republicans will defend the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and our fundamental freedoms, including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to keep and to bear arms. Democrats state they will incentivize states to enact licensing requirements for owning firearms and extreme risk protection order laws that allow courts to temporarily remove guns from the possession of those who are a danger to themselves or others. Concerning immigration, Republicans propose an aggressive plan to stop the open border policies that have opened the floodgates to a tidal wave of illegal aliens, deadly drugs, and migrant crime. We will end the invasion at the southern border, restore law and order, protect American sovereignty, and deliver a safe and prosperous future for all Americans, as per the statement of the Republicans. Democrats support policies and programs that make it easier for qualified immigrants and their families to become full and equal citizens. These include increasing funding for culturally appropriate immigrant inclusion and citizenship services, legal support, English classes, bilingual education, workforce development, and adult education. Regarding the borders, Republicans will restore every border policy of the Trump administration and halt all releases of illegal aliens into the interior. The Republicans will complete the border wall, shift massive portions of federal law enforcement to immigration enforcement, and use advanced technology to monitor and secure the border. Democrats will rescind President Trump's fabricated national emergency to construct an unnecessary and wasteful, ineffective wall on the southern border, the words of the Democrats. My personal observation is that actions and attitudes can speak much louder than written or spoken words. As I've listened to, watched, and read influencers in the Democrat Party, I have the following summary. The Democrats have primarily built their platform on what God hates. The party and its platform are a death cult under the influence of Satan's kingdom. They promote death and destruction. They promote the killing of unborn babies, even up to birth. They had abortion facilities outside of the Democratic Convention in August of 2024, highlighting their commitment to abortion. They promote the mutilation of youth in their campaign for gender fluidity and transgenderism. They facilitate full-on trafficking of women and children in their broken border policies. They sexualize children with their sexually perverted ideology. In my opinion, the current Democrats are the most radical party our nation has ever seen, that's ever been in our nation's history. As a born-again, Spirit-filled Christian, I do not know how a genuine Christian can vote for people or a party that holds to and promotes a platform that fundamentally represents what God hates. There are no perfect candidates, there are no perfect platforms, but as God-fearing Christians, we are responsible for voting in such a way that can best stem the tide of evil overtaking our land. We must vote for those who best uphold the promotion and dignity of life and reflect God and reflect His values. So to get to the point, number one, we must vote. Number two, we must vote in a way that most closely upholds the promotion and dignity of human life and which best represents God's biblical worldview.